Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the second information session in our series about DACA. My name is Adonia Simpson, and I direct the Family Defense Program at Americans for Immigrant Justice, and I'm joined by Ori. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Orieta. I am with the Family Defense Program. I am the legal assistant, and we will be providing more information regarding DACA.
So you probably tuned in for our last information session where we gave you an update on what's going on with DACA and eligibility for applying for the first time. So as promised, we're back and we're going to be talking to you about evidence. So evidence, it's everything. The application requires a lot of documentation, and you really want to make sure to provide that information from the get-go for two reasons. First of all, it can really delay the application if immigration has to send you a request for evidence and you need to reply to it. It can really drag out the processing time. And also, we just want to ensure that you're not getting those requests for evidence, that you have a well-documented application, that eligibility is clearly established. It just makes the whole process much more quick. So, Ori, if people want to get a checklist, where could they find a checklist?
So you can either get a checklist at United We Dream, just Google their website and you can find a checklist there, or you can come to us and we will do an intake, screen you for DACA and other immigration relief, and we can also provide you with a checklist if you do qualify.
Fantastic. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different types of evidence today, proving the individual elements of deferred action for childhood arrivals. Keep in mind that these are just suggestions. You might not have all the documentation, so you might have to get creative and think outside the box as in regards to proving some of these things. So just because you don't have something that's on the list doesn't mean that you won't be eligible to apply, that you won't be able to prove your eligibility. So just keep that in mind. And keep in mind that some of the evidence we're going to discuss today could meet multiple requirements. It could prove your entry, it could prove your physical presence, it could prove your presence on the date of the DACA announcement in 2012. So keep in mind that maybe you can double dip when it comes to evidence to prove multiple things. And then also, as you're going through this process of gathering the evidence, keep in mind the filing fee. It's $495. Start saving money now. There's a lot of micro-lending programs or loan programs or scholarship opportunities if you're unable to afford it. But start thinking about that now. You don't want to put a lot of effort into getting all your evidence and preparing your application, but then you're not able to afford it. So make sure you have that in the back of your mind. So one of the first things that you have to prove with any application with immigration, any benefits application, is you're proving identity and your age. Ori, how can a first-time DACA applicant do this?
Yes, so you need a government-issued ID with your name, photo, and date of birth, or a combination of IDs. So you can do a school ID or a birth certificate, and you can, a passport is not required for this, or you can have documents with your birth certificate that need to be, if the documents are not translated in English, and then they need to be translated. Sorry, if they're not translated in Spanish. Wait, I messed up.
If they're in any other language besides English, you need to ensure that they are translated into English and provided with the document. That's a requirement by USCIS. And as already mentioned, you might be combining types of identification, school ID and birth certificate. If you do have a passport, that's always a great piece of documentation because it does show your picture, prove your identity, and does have your date of birth and proving your age. So once you've gotten your identity and age established, Ori, what about the requirement on education? There's a lot of different things here. What might somebody be able to gather?
Yes, so in order to show proof of education, there's different things that you can show. So if you're a high school graduate, you can show your diploma that you graduated high school. If you didn't graduate high school, but you got your GED, you can show your GED diploma as proof. If you're currently in college, you can show your current transcripts or enrollment letters, or if you already graduated from college, you can show your college diploma. If you're in the military, you can show any military documents as proof that shows that you are in the military. So if you don't have any of those documents, then there might be some of the other things that you can show that might qualify to apply for DACA. So some of these things can be, there's different programs or training programs that you can go to that you can show as proof. If you show that you're working towards a high school diploma or a GED, or any other educational program that shows that you are meeting this requirement. However, you should be a bit skeptical with some programs that are not accredited, or programs that just make sure that the program is accredited in order for it to qualify for DACA. You also can show demonstrated effectiveness, like a track record of success or a duration of existence that shows that you were in school.
Yeah, so that's really important. If it sounds too good to be true, it might be. So if you haven't finished high school or gotten your GED or done some sort of career training program, trust reputable sources. Talk to nonprofits in the community for recommendations. If you're paying a lot of money for a program, but you're not having to attend any classes or there's no testing, please be careful with that. We did see a lot of requests for evidence, really challenging some educational providers in the past. So just make sure you're going to a reputable source. So next, I think this is the tough one, right? Ori, how do we prove continuous residence from June 15, 2007 to present? That's a long time.
Yes, so in order to show presence, you need to show proof that you were in the United States from June 15, 2007 until current day now, so December 2020. So we highly recommend that you try to gather at least one document for every 3 months in order to prove evidence for presence. So what are the types of documents that you need for this? You can show school records, any rental contracts, any bills, bank statements, pay stubs, medical records, social media, anything like that. If you are seeing that you don't really have these documents, then you can try to get creative and try to think of documents that might show that you were here on a certain date.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, gathering a piece of evidence from every 3 months. That's a lot. How should people organize their evidence?
So there is a checklist that we will provide you with that you can, has a list of all of the documents that you can show proof of evidence. So some of the things were, like I mentioned, your school documents, bank statements, pay stubs, things like that. If, since you were in school, which is one of the requirements, then you can obtain your transcripts from school, and this would actually cover many of the years that you need. So that would be very helpful.
Fantastic. And what about, I know that I've gotten a lot of questions from clients if they think that they don't have sufficient, evidence about presence, they want to write an affidavit. Minor gaps in presence, and an affidavit could attest to that. However, generally immigration is a little skeptical about affidavits, particularly those coming from the applicant for the benefit. If you're going to do affidavits, think critically about it and make sure that it's someone other than the person applying for the benefit. So maybe a neighbor or some less interested party. Immigration just looks disfavorably on the applicant's affidavit. So you might have to get creative that way. We want to avoid affidavits as much as possible. And also make sure you're looking at your evidence with a critical eye. If you're providing check-ins from social media, look and see where you're checking in at and what you're doing and any sort of photos involved with that. Just because it is a discretionary benefits. So you want to make sure that part of your evidence isn't something that could be a negative factor. For example, arrest records might prove that you have presence, but is that really the best way to prove your presence? Because it could go to discretion. So you want to think critically about that, look at the evidence, and make sure that it is the best form of evidence that could be provided to show your. So another thing that might be a little tricky for some people, Ori, one of the requirements is that people entered before they turned 16. What are some ways that they could prove that they were here before their 16th birthday?
So some of these things can be school records. You can obtain your transcripts from school, and this will show the year that you were there. It'll show what classes you took, and that's one way that you can determine that you were there before your 16th birthday. You can also show your proof of entry documents. So this would be your I-94 document or your passport stamped with the date that you entered, and this can show that you were there in the United States before your 16th birthday. You can also show medical records. So this can be any immunization shots that you did, anything like that, that shows the actual date that you took those shots, that can show proof as well. Any immigration records as well, which I just spoke about, would be your I-94 number. That can be shown as proof.
And what about folks that maybe entered without permission and got stopped at the border, but they think is there a way to get those immigration records?
Yes, so in order to obtain those records, and if you think you might not have them, then you can come to us and we can do an intake for you, and we can provide a FOIA for you to sign, and we will request those documents from the government, which will show your entry documents from when you entered.
Exactly. And a FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act request. So that's a way that we can get copies of your records directly from immigration. So if you have any of these things, but you don't know where they're at, or you don't have them anymore, we can always do a FOIA to get them. So next element that we need to prove is that somebody was actually physically present on June 15th, 2012. This was the date that DACA was announced, and they want to ensure that people were actually here on the date of the announcement and did not arrive following that. So Ori, this has got to be hard. How can folks prove this?
Well, in order to show proof of presence, one of the things that you can do, and it might be the easiest thing, is obtaining your school records, your transcript for whatever grade you were in for 2011, 2012, or 2012 and 2013. That might be enough to show proof of presence. You can also look through your documents and see if you find any old report cards that might show the June 15th date, since school tends to end in June. So if you can look through your documents and look through 2011, 2012, and 2012, 2013 to see if you find the June 2012 date.
Yeah, and if you can't get that, evidence for that exact date, trying to show something for as close as before the date and then after the date can also work. So this is where you really need to think critically and creatively and potentially sit down with an attorney or Department of Justice accredited rep to discuss your case. So the next thing is criminal dispositions. Just because you may have had interactions with law enforcement doesn't mean that you're not eligible to apply for DACA. However, it is a really technical and tricky analysis. So if you have had any interactions with the criminal justice system, we are going to want to look at those police reports and court records. There's a lot of risks with applying for folks that, even though your information won't be shared, we do want to ensure that people are not providing information when they are in fact not eligible. So criminal histories can be really tricky. There's a lot of exceptions. For example, juvenile adjudications generally don't count as convictions. Expunged convictions wouldn't disqualify somebody. However, it all plays toward its discretion. The officer can look at the totality of the circumstances and see whether or not somebody merits a grant of the benefits. So make sure you're getting copies of final certified dispositions the attorneys will likely be reviewing the relevant statutes to see if it meets the eligibility requirements as to whether it might disqualify you. So it is a tricky legal analysis. So you want to start working on getting that right now. During the pandemic, it can be a little bit more difficult to get court and police records, so it might take a little bit more time. So do that now. Immigration will find out about any interaction with law enforcement, particularly if you've been fingerprinted. So it's better to have that discussion with an attorney prior to making the decision to apply. All right, Odi. Folks tuning in, they listen to all your information. They've been gathering their documents. They think they're ready to apply. What's next? What are the next steps?
So if you think you have all of the documents that you need, then you can contact our office at 305-573-1106, extension 1400, and we will be able to do an intake for you and determine if you do qualify for DACA, and then determine if you do have all of your documents. So if you do have all of your documents, then we can move on to start filling out the actual forms for the application. If you don't have all of your documents, then we will reach out and let you know of what document is missing and from what year, and we can help you figure out which evidence you can show as proof for that or anything else that you're missing. And yeah, we will be providing now another infographic sessions to find out more information about DACA.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We're going to be covering the actual application process, the forms involved, and what to expect after you submit. So thanks for joining and have a great day.
Thank you.